It's a Monday. That means it's time for the 2 minute drill. I'm Jim Monaghan along with Chris Swendeman. And Swendy, we've got a lot to catch up on. End of the NFL regular season, of course. We're into the playoffs and lots of coach maneuverings, including the one that had to happen in terms of the New England Patriots, and that's Mike Vrabel.
Yeah, that was, I mean, really nobody should have been surprised about that one coming down the pike. I think that was a guy that Robert Kraft targeted probably for longer than most people realize, and they got their guy. They went out and got him. They did what
There,
they had to do.
there is at least one report coming out of New England that one of Vrabel's moves will be to tell certain people in the front office, stay in your lane. Leave me alone.
Good,
Stay in your
good
lane.
for him.
Yes.
You know what? Good for him because there's been, yeah, I was reading today, there have been reports about a lot of meddling and people in the front office in New England that like to dabble and have their say in, the personnel side. Well, Bill Parcells once said, you know what? If I'm going to make the meal, I want to buy the groceries. Well, Vrabel knows if he's cooking, stay out of my kitchen. And you know what? Good for him for setting the tone because that's the stuff that starts to unravel little by little. And if you set the tone from the day you walk in, he's going to be better off for doing that.
And of course, what that means is he's not following the legend in Bill Belichick. Somebody's already done that in Gerard Mayo. So he's dealing, I think, from a little bit more of a position of strength. So with the Patriots hiring Vrabel, what that means, of course, is he is not in the running for the Jets coaching position. And quite frankly, I don't think Vrabel would have ever taken it. But I do think that's one of the reasons why Kraft moved so quickly. Rex Ryan is apparently out of the running for the Jets job as well.
Color me shocked that Rex didn't have his finger on the pulse and didn't have the job by now. He thought he was a shoe-in. I mean, clearly he was the best candidate for the job, if you ask him. But no, in all seriousness, yeah, they already ruled out Rex. And I think they've interviewed what seems like 20 people already for this job. And they still have apparently more of a list that they want to interview for this job. So who knows? That your guess is as good as anybody's, Jim, when it comes to the Jet job.
And of course, they have to hire another general manager as well. Meanwhile, a little closer to home with you, Mr. Swendeman, would be Mike McCarthy, no longer the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. They're not going to work on a new contract. What's your take on that situation?
The only thing you could ever be certain of with Uncle Jerry, when talking about Jerry Jones, is the fact that there's never anything certain. Jerry, every time you think you have the answers, he's going to change the questions. I think the feeling around a lot of, from what I was reading online, the Dallas media was kind of like maybe he's going to bring him back. That's why he didn't allow Chicago to interview him last week, that they were going to work on a contract and he was going to keep McCarthy. And as of today, as we all know, they decided they couldn't come to contract terms. And now he's free to speak with whoever he wants. McCarthy already informed all his assistants. They are free to look for other work. So now he's into that coaching pool as well. But now he's behind the eight ball. And I know there are some people who's, in the media who've been saying, well, it's a dirty move by Jerry. No, he had an exclusive window until tomorrow, the 14th, to negotiate with him. And by all accounts, they did negotiate. It didn't work out. Maybe Jerry had a change of heart. But either way, he decided against it. He had this window and he was going to use it. And, this is Jerry's MO. He takes it up to the very last minute.
McCarthy had three 12-win seasons. They were back to back to back, followed by this past season with 7 wins.
Right.
And we know that there were issues with injuries and what have you. He also
Right.
had them finish first in the NFC East 2 times. And let me run this idea past you. He's probably the best coach out there right now without a job. What about the New York Jets?
I think they should give it a shot and interview him. Maybe he's a fit, but does he want to come to the Jets? I mean, that's what I think we ask ourselves about a lot of candidates right now. Do you really want to? It's not just a job, Jim. Like going to the Jets is you have to really have a mindset that this is going to be tough and I'm going to have to overcome a lot. The Rodgers situation right now is still up in the air. They don't have the GM like you had just touched on. what are you getting yourself into? Do you really want to coach that bad is the question. And I think Mike McCarthy's got some other, with the Super Bowl ring, in his back pocket that he's already won with Green Bay. I think he has more credo to lending himself to some of the better positions out there than just going saying, well, if the Jets are my only shot, then I'll go with them. I think he's going to look to something that's more his liking.
Now, with McCarthy, and you mentioned the Super Bowl, the other guy involved in that Super Bowl, and you mentioned him, Aaron Rodgers, the only Super Bowl ring that Rodgers has. Their relationship at the end, they butted heads a little bit, but you think of McCarthy's reputation as a guy who can develop quarterbacks. And when it worked with McCarthy and Rodgers, it really worked. Knowing that this could be Rodgers' last season, knowing that the Jets need to develop a quarterback, I look at McCarthy and go, if he can walk into Woody Johnson and say, listen, I'm going to do it my way, give me the reins, it might make sense for the Jets.
It could definitely make sense for the Jets for a lot of reasons. But, again, you just look at McCarthy and you go, does he really want to undertake such a big, upheaval? Whether, you have Rodgers for a year and then, dare you say you want to draft a quarterback for the future, he could get bristled about that. We've seen him do it before when the Packers drafted Jordan Love a few years ago as his eventual successor. So I don't know. I think it's more the question of does McCarthy want to come here than should the Jets interview him?
And one of the other things that popped up over the past few hours was Sports Illustrated with a report that Mike Tomlin could be available with the Steelers via a trade. Is that something that the Jets might want to explore?
I think they absolutely should explore that because Tomlin is a no nonsense guy. He's a great coach. I mean, you've seen what he's done. There are Steelers teams over the past few years since Ben Roethlisberger retired. Every year you say this is going to be the year the Steelers are going to fall off, and he still gets them to the playoffs. Wins notwithstanding. I mean, they've had a tough time once they get in, but getting there is half the battle. I would even say three-quarters of the battle. So for the Jets, I would absolutely say that is a huge yes for them to try to bring in Tomlin and, work out the compensation later, but bring him in for an interview 1000%.
And we're just about a month away from MLB pitchers and catchers reporting. And let me throw this one out at you. I think the odds of Pete Alonso returning to the Mets just got a lot better because over the past couple of days, reports were saying that Alonso went to the Mets and said, listen, how about a 3-year deal instead of longer? And we'll work on the average value of the contract, the average annual value. And given the Soto signing, and then you've got Vientos in the lineup as well, somebody like Alonso might make a lot of sense. You look at his numbers since he came into the league in 2019, and I've been very critical of Pete, no question about it. But since he came into the league in 2019, only one player has more home runs than Alonso, and that's Aaron Judge. And that number is really small. It's 6. It's just 6
Right.
home runs. So,
Yep.
as a DH on a shorter deal than what he was initially looking for, I think it makes a lot of sense for the Mets to do this.
Well, this is this year's JD Martinez signing. Only he's a homegrown Met. Um, I think it makes all the sense in the world for the Mets. And the longer it goes, the closer they get to pitchers and catchers, it just keeps working in the Mets' favor. But I think I think we've touched on this before. If the Mets don't re-sign Alonso, I think your offseason is much less successful than it would have been with the signing of Juan Soto. And then you bring back Alonso to protect him in the lineup.
Mm-hmm.
It's a much better looking lineup with the two of them than if you just have Soto and then kind of do patchwork at first base or DH, what position it is. But right now, if Alonso is kind of basically downplaying his own contract demands, where do you go wrong with this to not bring him back?
Yeah, 3 years is what he's said to be asking for with opt outs, which I guess means an opt out after the first year and an opt out
Right.
after the second year. One other baseball note, Japanese pitcher Roki Sasaki has already told the Mets and Yankees, thank you, but no thank you. And he has reportedly whittled things down to 3 teams. That would be the Dodgers, the Padres, and the Blue Jays. Like nobody wants to
Yeah.
go to Toronto, and this guy's saying, "Yeah,
No,
they're one of three teams I'm still interested in."
no one goes to Toronto on purpose. I mean, they usually get traded there. But I know, in all seriousness, I mean, can we just end this already and have him on the Dodgers, which we know is all gonna, which is all but gonna happen? I mean, I know he's got family on the Padres. I get it. That could be a possibility. Toronto, I don't believe it for a second. I think Toronto's willing to throw a lot of money at him, and it behooves him to keep them, in the negotiations. But really, in my mind, he goes to the Dodgers. I mean, it's that simple.
And that is the 2 Minute Drill podcast for this week. If you're watching this on YouTube, please, we ask you to click like and subscribe. And Swendeman, we'll talk again next Monday.
You got it, Jim. Have a great week.